And because of the 50% government funding, and also because we want to accelerate deployment, we expect to make the outputs available as widely as possible. So a lot of the knowledge from our projects will be published. Of course, there will still be commercial and proprietary knowledge and patented technology, but actually getting knowledge out there helps the market to understand your products and services and make better use of them. So there's no real underlying conflict between building the knowledge by market by putting knowledge into it and being commercially successful. As Adam said, that's where we fit. We use the NASA technology readiness levels categorization, which I personally hadn't seen until I came across the ETI, but as soon as I saw it, it was blindingly obviously a good way of categorizing it and very recognizable to map onto my experience. So I think it's a really good way of looking at things. And we span from 3, which is to have, if you like, something that works on the bench in a lab. I think would be a reasonable description of 3 as the core technology concept perhaps, through to 6, which is to have a complete system working in, at the very least, a simulated environment as close as possible to the final environment. And that, again, can be a bit difficult for people who come along with the core technology. We don't support core technologies. We want to see the system. That's our ambition, is to get the system across the finishing line. And in fact, the space we might play in, rather more than looking at things coming out of the lab, is actually things that have been out of the lab for a while and creating systems with bits of existing and bits of emerging technology that get the job done. And the little pictures, examples of particular technologies we've come across at those stages. So a typical project that we do would demonstrate those system level capabilities. Can you actually make this work in the real world? And there would, as well as the core technologies, we had a discussion recently and someone said, well, is software a technology? To which I think the answer is yes, of course it is. And services, so installation, maintenance, all those other things that you need to make a technology successful in the real world, and other kinds of services as well, modelling tools and things. We would expect to see some demonstration of supply chain capacity and capability. So on one of our recent projects, the consortium had already agreed with somebody else that they were going to sell them the first 200 units provided they met a certain performance target. And there was some discussion about, do we like that or not? And the answer was, we love it, because it shows that they're actually going to produce the devices and someone really wants to buy them. And somebody muttered darkly, and I'm really pleased that somebody else is going to get the first 200. This might even have been Adam, I don't know. So speaks the voice of experience. And really what we're trying to do is to take the risk out of these systems for people at both ends. The risk out of people trying to bring their technology to the marketplace in terms of building these more capable activities, and out of the whole supply chain for investors, dealing with some of the issues that Adam described. And not to leave academia out of this, is quite a lot of academic participation in order to enable that technology transfer, but we're also pretty confident, because we know from experience that some of the technology systems will throw up gaps, and we will therefore be going back and saying there are actually some unsolved research problems here that need to be undertaken, funded by the EPSRC, for example. And the EPSRC are keenly waiting to see what we come up with. So imagine a project looking at demand-side management. In case you think that this is a description of a real project, this slide was put together weeks before we actually went into this area as a sort of thought model, and I shall have to be a little bit careful because I actually know what the projects in this area look like now, so I shall be drawn back to a real project that might not be too different from this. So one of the big issues in this whole area is how you manage demand when your supply is no longer controlled by spinning up gas turbines or coal plants, because you can't easily make wind behave like that and you don't want to waste it. Or even in a situation where you have micro-scale energy generation locally and you're trying to match heat demand with electricity demand or the variable availability of energy from solar photovoltaic panels on the roof. And there's quite a lot of work that needs to be done to integrate all of those things together at the building scale. And we could well imagine a project that set out to do that. Because you're doing it in the real world, it costs a lot of money. So might well need to spend 10 or 20 million pounds to get a sufficient scale of demonstration system to get meaningful information about what really happens when you try and do this. We think this is probably quite a risky project. There's a fairly good chance that when you set off, you will discover that it doesn't work the way you thought. Your yield estimates were wrong or something, and afterwards it will be clear to you where you went wrong. That's the whole point of doing it, is to try and understand what happens when you put these things together. And the kind of partners you might expect will be 3 ETI members maybe, some pretty big companies with a lot of capability, maybe a nation electronics company, 3 universities, and 1 or 2 or 3 small SMEs with some bits of technology that they're just itching to put into real life and show that they do actually deliver the benefits, or that they don't work for a reason that wasn't obvious to them. And that's the point at which I have to try and remember whether I'm talking about the real life or not. So these are the kinds of program areas we've talked about, and they're not quite in priority order, but we have set off from the top. So we are doing things down to about carbon capture and sequestration, and we may well start doing things in some of the other areas, or indeed the list might change as our thinking develops and we see where the gaps are from some of the other things. So in the last 6 months, where have we got to? The shadow team were extremely well prepared. As soon as they had a legal existence, they launched their first call within less than a week for marine, wave and tidal technologies, and jointly with the Carbon Trust on offshore wind. We had more than 100 expressions of interest for each of those programs, and we held project building workshops in various stages to actually come up with some projects. We've now got 10 projects. In fact, we've just been to the board and agreed how we're going to take those forward and discuss contracts. There's quite a bit of work to go now to cross the finishing line and get investable projects with real contracts and structures in place around them. Yesterday and the day before, we held a distributed energy workshop. We preceded that actually with a somewhat larger and more formal stakeholder consultation we'd used for the previous ones. We did do stakeholder consultation, the purpose of which is to make sure that you're thinking about where to play and what you need to do is right. And we had nearly 200 expressions of interest for that. We certainly have some interesting looking project proposals starting to take shape. And we have a consultation on carbon capture and storage on the 3rd of July. Since I'm here in Loughborough, the ETI is partly supported by the Midlands Consortium. So the hosting of the ETI here, although I know very little about the details, was actually through a competitive process which the Midlands Consortium were successful in. And there are 3 universities who are part of that. So Loughborough, and I guess the main focus in Loughborough is the Sustainability Research School, or within the school perhaps the Centre for Renewable Energy Systems and Technologies. In Birmingham there's the Institute for Energy Research and Policy, and in Nottingham there's the Energy Technologies Research Institute. They have no special position within the ETI. They're not represented in our governance structures. They have no particular priority if they participate in projects, but they're close to us, and we do expect, as we get up to speed ourselves, that we will be engaging with them. I've talked to people in a number of these organisations, and you can see already that we will start to interact to mutual benefit. We'll get advice and help from them, and some of their people will be involved in and contributing to some of our activities, which will give feedback to them and educational opportunities for some of the people that are being taught that. So I think we expect that it'll be quite a source of strength for us that we can draw on such good academic talent so easily, and we hope that our presence here will also be part of the cluster, which Adam mentioned Rolls-Royce are here as well, and will create some focus and capability in the region on energy technologies. Thank you.